All right, so at
Wait, the recorder. So now you're ready.
okay.
Click stream. Sorry, yeah. Okay. Minimize.
All right, so
I was like,
at 2:05, we're calling the meeting to order. A couple things. First off, we did our roll call. We have
Hold your agenda.
10 present and 1. Sorry, we have 10 total present, 1 excused, and I'm guessing was that 2 unexcused? That's our agenda.
Mr. Chair, go through the roll call so it's on the record so you know who's here.
All right. Chris Johnson, I'm present. Leslie Gibson.
Present.
Anika Hassan.
Present.
Taylor Sanchez.
Present.
Elizabeth Guerra.
Present.
It's being subbed. The alternate. Is there a proper format? For
She's excused until an alternate is appointed.
All right.
Elizabeth is excused.
Teo Hernandez.
Here.
Gustavo Lopez.
Here.
Kevin Madden.
Present.
Emily Seitz. Excused. Carlo Chamorro.
Attendance.
Ryan Miller.
Present.
Chelsea Velez. Unexcused. Imram Ahmed. Unexcused. All right, this is the agenda. Your agenda all today. We're not going to be doing this every day. I just wanted to give you guys something paper for the first meeting so you have something in front of you. But this is the agenda in front of you. So any additions or deletions that anyone wants to make to the agenda?
I would suggest viewpoint neutrality presentation that I'm going to do. If anyone wants to add it to the agenda, maybe under SOPs, and also to strike the fiscal aspect of executive branch. They're not asking for more money, so they're not going to come to us.
Do you have a motion for those 2 changes?
I moved to put the viewpoint neutrality presentation by Aziz under
Under SOPs.
under SOPs, and then I moved to remove the presentation on the fiscal aspect of the executive branch.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Masha, do I need to, do I make a line to that, or can I just leave it off?
If you're striking something, you can complete it.
Alright. Anything else? Any other additions or deletions? Alright, with that, there's a motion for the approval of the minutes. Does anyone want to motion for that?
Motion to approve the minutes as is.
Alright, is there a second?
Second.
Alright, so so we have an open forum first off. Does anyone want to say anything? Anyone want to start off with any, well, just as your chairperson, just so you guys know, this is our first meeting, obviously. We are the largest committee by far. The other people, I think the next closest is JEC, and they have, I think, 5 people signed up right now. So far we have 13, and we're missing someone, so we have to pull up. I'm going to go over kind of what our responsibilities are in a few minutes, but thank you very much for signing up. It's going to be really fun working with you guys over the summer, and we're going to do a lot of cool stuff. So does anyone want to add anything else?
I just had a question. I think you accidentally missed like a dot on my email, which is why I didn't get like the email. But either way, did you attach the documents to the email?
I did not. These documents right here?
To the original.
No, I
email?
did not. I'll let you make the presentation.
You had like a weird app lighting the email. Yours was like usfu.microsoft Outlook. It was weird.
Yeah, it didn't get to me either way for some reason, but yeah.
Well, what we'll do is at the end of this meeting, I'll go ahead and pass out a piece of paper. If you guys could all just write down the email that you want to be contacted at, so we can finalize that. And your email, obviously, too. I'll go ahead and email everything to Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
So there won't be any more communication issues after this. All right. So sorry about that. Any other points?
So, open forum, or is that what we're on?
Yep.
What did you guys just finish while I stepped out?
Right now, we just said that there was a communication issue with his email because I put the wrong at apparently, because an Outlook at something else. So we're gonna pass around sheet at the end of the meeting saying that there will be, writing down your specific email. So
You guys postpone the minutes, right?
Hmm.
Postpone. You guys skip that part?
post.
So, go back to the approval of minutes. Just have someone motion since there's no minutes to postpone the
The
minutes.
minutes have been approved.
So
we
the
are-
agenda's
Not
approved.
approved,
Did you-
agenda
I'm sorry.
base of minutes.
I'm sorry. So can I have a motion to postpone the minutes?
Motion for-
Is there a second? Alright. So the minutes have been postponed. So I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much. Alright, so we're on to new business. Okay,
I have an open forum thing, so.
I'm sorry, please.
So, I know you guys got the agenda at 9 o'clock this morning, and it used to be 24-hour advance notice. So what I suggested for the chair is that we not go to the new business of the transfer request and election, since we don't have the 24 hours to breaking statutes. But we could do the training portion of it, vehicle neutrality portion. That way we're in compliance with our statutes. So that was my suggestion for the committee, that first time it's okay, but we can't conduct any new business since the 24-hour advance notice was not sent out in time. But we could do all the trainings, SOPs, and vehicle neutrality, all that stuff. Just not the bull trader and election, we could say that for next week.
Seeing as that's the case, shouldn't we have removed the election? And
You guys can go back, I just forgot. Okay, for a little bit.
So are there any points you'd like to strike from new business then, according to that?
I would suggest the board radio and the vice chair elections.
Can I just see a motion for that?
Objections.
Objection?
I say, I would prefer to just strike the election vice chair since I understand that was like kind of breaking statutes, but I feel like the budget transfer request, like after learning like SOPs, would be a good kind of like hands-on practice for
You
our
could-
committee members.
Maybe what we can do is we can make a decision about it, but we can table the actual voting on the topic until the next meeting, so there's proper warning given out, but we can still go over the actual budget request today. Is that in violation of anything?
Defer to Gary for,
Well, the one thing you have to realize that our statutes are based on state law and public record, and as a public agency, we have to give notice of public meetings so that anybody can come in and view our business, so we're transparent and open. And so part of that goes, and our statutes reflect state law. State law isn't specific a lot of times to some of the things it says, but ours says 24 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So we really need to follow those, because what I don't want to happen to any of you in this room is if you get a Rambunctious senator somewhere that's outside of this room, and certain things that may come back on you, Chris, that, we get impeachments all the time and things like that. So we want to make sure we follow everything appropriately, because one thing, first, it's best for our image, it also means we're following state law. And then the second thing is you don't put yourselves in jeopardy for breaking something, whether it's well intended or not. If that makes sense.
Would you recommend that,
I would recommend you, the law is pretty specific about that, you don't discuss any future business that could have a vote. So if you're gonna vote on this, I would say bring use a different sample for the training, and come back to this for next time.
also we can talk about budget transfers, what they are, or we can like make up examples around. And we can talk about what the vice chair does and what your expectations are for the vice chair. We can do all of that new business specifically next week.
alright, with that,
That could all just go, I would just strike the last two and just include all the training things we just mentioned in the training. What are you gonna do?
do you have a motion for that?
I move to strike the budget transfer request and election vice chair from the agenda.
Do you have a second?
Second.
So, any other comments during open forum? Alright, so with that, we're gonna go into new business that does not require a vote. So, You guys all know this, but just to go over this again, my name is Chris Johnson. I'm the chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations and Audits. We kind of went over what this does in Senate just a little bit, but we're going to go a little more in depth today. So each one of you should have a folder in front of you, which I went ahead and got just for this meeting. You know, you're not required to bring this every single meeting. I just want you guys to have paper information in front of you because it is kind of confusing getting a hold of electronic documents, especially when you're first starting out. Once for me, at least. Basically, we have two big jobs. The first is to deal with interim budget requests. So interim budgets are any budgets that are not annual, which are literally, ASARC deals with annual budgets. These are budgets that basically every single organization that wants to receive ANS funding has to submit to the student government. But there are a substantial number of organizations that don't do that. Last year, I think there's something like 97 organizations that submitted interim budgets, I believe, over the course of the year, and those are all going to be up to our discretion how we deal with that. Including with that, kind of lumped together, is also very close to campus travel requests, which we'll talk about in a bit. Special funding deals with majority travel requests, but we do deal with a couple of local stuff. The other big task that we do, aside from these interim budgets, are auditing, which is not. Basically, that means that as a committee, we're going to go to different events. We're going to make sure that the money that these organizations ask for, they're using the way that they said. If they expected 100 people to show up and they had 10, then that needs to be something that we audit, that we report to ASARC, and then that they can receive less money for. Conversely, if they get more people than expected, we should need to make a note of that too. So those are kind of our dual functions for this committee, and it is time intensive. We're going to be working with especially JEC, but all the other committees pretty closely too. So we have a lot of cool stuff to do. So we're going to go over standard and operating procedures in a minute. I kind of want to show you these other forms first, though. The budget transfer request is right behind standard operating procedure. This is kind of the form. Organizations that want money to be transferred between certain accounts, they're going to have to fill out this form and talk to us about. So, for example, if an organization was allotted $10,000 and they have, say, $8,000 of that for payroll, which a lot are set up that way, but they want to go ahead and take payroll and transfer to something else, then they need to make a budget transfer request for us. So, for example, if an organization does radio broadcasts and they have a lot of extra payroll left over and they want to use that payroll to get new radio broadcast equipment, then they would need to talk to us, submit this form. We would need to go down, look at the equipment, and we need to sit down and talk with them, make a meeting, and stuff like that, as an example. You'll notice that there are 5 categories on the account to transfer from and 6 on the other side, and that's because you can't transfer out of travel. The idea being that if someone is allocated travel money, then you can't. Why would they need to transfer out of that? Like, it's understandable for payroll or for a couple extra, maybe material or food monies, but they can't come out of travel. So that's a budget transfer form. This next one is the budget meeting questionnaire. So all of us, myself included, I've already done this several times, but all of us are going to be meeting with various student organizations. So we're going to be sitting down with people and having them explain to us why they want the money they want, right? They're going to be sitting down and saying, why is it that they feel they deserve $2,000 to do some, to get food? Why is it they feel that they need extra money in a certain way? Why is it that they didn't file annual budget requests? You kind of have to think that if there's so many organizations on campus, I don't even know how many student organizations receiving this funding, several hundred, right? But so many do this. Why is it that we still get almost 100 that come to us, right? Some organizations, if they're new, then they apply for interim budgets, right? As opposed to annual budgets, because they want to be funded until they can actually apply for annual budget. But a lot of organizations miss the deadline to apply for annual budget, and that's why they apply for interim. And we're going to see in a couple minutes when we look at the SOPs exactly like how that gets, they get docked for that in a way. But anyways, the point of this is that at first it's going to be me and a couple of us sitting down with organizations. Later on, the vice chair and a couple of senators are going to be sitting down. Later on, I want individual senators to actually be able to sit down with these organizations so we can get some answers. All right. So go ahead. This questionnaire, you're not going to need to take it every single committee. The people I've met with so far, I haven't brought it to any of them. But you do need to have you need to ask consistently the same kind of questions, which again we'll go over. The last 2 pages on here, the interim budget application. This is an older copy. We're still going through the process of getting the newer copy up. It should be up sometime this week. It should be done. But basically, organizations, this is what they fill out, and as you see, it has this first page, the second page. They're like I believe these are samples. Yeah. So this is like a sample of the interim budget process. So you're going to have, the Future Physical Therapist Organization. They have $150 set aside for food, $300 set aside for materials, $450 for subtotal. You see they do have $27 set aside for overhead, which every organization is going to do that wants funding. But we need to we need to critically look at each one of these things, and the point of auditing is to see if they're actually allocating the money the way that they said they're allocating on the standard budget request. All right. And last but not least, the final product of our action is going to be the last page, which is this bill. This is after we sit down in committee and we discuss how we recommend an interim budget should be allocated, right? Because it is up to us ultimately. The discretion is how we want to allocate the money. We don't have to approve everything people send to us. It really is up to our discretion. We're going to make a bill and propose it to Senate, and if the Senate likes it, then we'll vote on it at that time, and the money can get allocated to the ASBO. If they don't like it, they'll send it back to us, and we'll hash it out some more. But this is the product that we're all searching for, okay? And it's a lot. It looks very clean compared to how much work and how much paperwork is involved in getting to that point. So before we go into the standard operating procedure, does anyone have any questions about any of these forms, or just kind of some general questions? Yeah.
So I found it interesting. You said you wanted the vice chair and then also other members of the committee to sit down and do, I guess, meet with some of the organizations.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't done last year. I just wanted to know what your reasoning for doing that is, and I guess what your thoughts on it. I guess what your overall point in doing that.
Well, a couple things. Since AMA, since the Senate Committee on Appropriations and Auditing is the most powerful committee that's standing right now, since ASARC isn't around, this is the people who are in here. My impression is that they want to be involved later on in the Senate, and I want them to have some actual practical experience. I don't want them to just show up to the Senate committee meetings just because they have to be there, but I want them to actually be actively involved. Zane did a really, really good job by herself last year, and that's good, but my opinion is that if you have more smart people working on a project, you're going to have a better result than just one smart person working on a project. So I think we can get more done efficiently if we have more people working on it. Also, the vice chair, traditionally the vice chair runs for the president of this afterwards. So I really want the vice chair to get involved because, hopefully that person can be the most qualified and can run for the position of president next year. But also, it's a good practical experience. Being able to negotiate money with organizations is something that you're going to want to know how to do when you get older. I would like to know how to do it now. I wish I could put that on my resume, and that's why we're all sitting down doing this. So it's a learning experience for everyone, and I feel like the best way you can learn is by actually going to the organizations and talking to them. Does that answer your question?
Okay, this is a point of clarification.
Yeah.
What is the 25% deduction? Is that for doing the interim?
That is for, yes, they get deducted 25% if they miss the annual budget. So if they're a new organization, they are not going to get docked 25% because it's not their fault. But if they, basically the idea is that we want to encourage them to not miss annual budget again. And that's how we do it. So. Any other questions? All right, I have a presentation. I want to kind of some of the same similar points, but every single chairperson who's ever done this committee and any other committee has had this. So I want to show this to you. Do I actually start it?
Bottom.
Bottom.
Yeah.
There you go. Alright, so. Alright, so the Senate Committee on Appropriations and Auditing. This is our current logo. We're still trying to figure out if that's the one we're going to keep, but that's how much money we get to deal with, $150,000. That might be subject to change, but that's the pool that we get to allocate to these organizations that request interim funding. Every single part of the standard operating procedures, and we're going to go over this in a few minutes, is what the criteria for, or what the qualifications the organization has to have in order to receive ANS funding is. But if there is an event or even 10 people who are requesting ANS funding, they have to meet these certain criteria. We're going to, again, go over that in a second. Again, your expectations for being here, you need to show up to the meetings, and you need to be actively involved. You need to read over your agenda when it's emailed to you 24 hours in advance, which is a mistake I made for this first committee, and I do apologize for that. It won't happen again, but you do need to go ahead and read over that. The people, not everyone's going to work on every single budget request. The way I kind of envisioned it working is that when someone brought to committee, so each committee, someone would take the responsibility for a different one, and the people would get more responsibility later on. But if you get a budget request, it's important that we look at it within 10 days again, because if we don't actually respond to their budget request within 10 days, they automatically get the appropriation. So if we want to prevent that from happening, we need to go.
That's for the budget transfer requests, not the interim requests.
Right, thank you very much. So, and even if we don't, that's true. So for transfer requests, if we don't do it within 10 days, they automatically get their way, which is most times not a big deal, but we still want to have that kind of oversight, that kind of auditing process in there. But if we don't, I guess even more important than that, if we don't quickly respond to an organization's interim budget, then they're left without a budget, right? They can't really operate very well if they don't have money. So it's going to be our job to kind of respond to that when we're presented with it. So, any other questions about anything else about this committee before we move on to the SOPs? Yeah.
Because I saw that you put meeting time on 2 p.m. for the summer. Do you have any idea where you might fall in school service?
Not yet, no. I would hope that it would still be in the afternoon. Because personally, I like to have my class in the morning, come knock them out. But I'm open to whatever's best for you guys. So this is not just my committee, it's everyone's committee. So anything else? Yeah.
I just want to say I thought it was a really good idea that you wanted to incorporate the whole committee into meeting with the organizations, because it helps us get experience. And with that, like you said, with the timing, these organizations they'll have dates in the fall or dates in the spring that they want to have events, and if we get to their budget late, then their events might have already passed. Some of their events might have already passed, which we want to try to have not happen, so that way we can fund them for the things that they want to get done.
I met with the Aquarius Club president today. The Aquarius Club is the club of people who are dedicated fish lovers. Every single one of them owns a fish tank, and they're really cool people. The president, he was what you kind of expected, the president of that organization. Really, he was mature and patient and quiet, but very intelligent. He was requesting a off-campus expense. No, he was requesting a budget transfer to pay for tickets for this off-campus item that they go to every year. 2 years ago, when they did it last, they had them work with the biology club because they only had 10 people in the club. This year, they have 70. They've grown so much, but they need to do this soon because they have to go ahead and reserve the tickets, because their event where they take a charter fishing boat out to the Gulf, right? That needs to get paid for pretty soon. So time is kind of the essence of that, for example. So we don't want to ruin those guys' days, But yeah, so that's the presentation. Any other questions? Awesome. Let's see, did I have anything else to show you guys before we do the next thing? Okay, we'll go ahead and look at the standard operating procedures really fast. Not really fast, because it is kind of standard operating procedure. So this is kind of like, there's a lot of rules with student government. This is our specific set of rules. This is how our committees run. right? And these rules, because they are our rules, we can change these rules if we want to. There's a process for that. But basically, these are the rules that we have to play by. So I'm not going to read every single line because there's a lot. But the big things are that our committee works really closely with JEC, and that if JEC, their job explicitly, I mean, they do a lot of stuff, but one of their explicit jobs is to review the constitutions of organizations that request funding. If their organization is not open, as in they don't allow anyone to join, if their organization does not, if their organization charges membership fees, if their organization discriminates might not be the right word, but if they have some sort of policy about who can join, they can't receive government funding. And if the JEC finds any interpretation of any of those things with the organization, then we can't give them money. So these SOPs kind of outline that. They also outline, we also have to follow the Senate Constitution. Basically, what I really want you guys to do is by the next committee meeting, I want you guys to have read this. It's kind of our homework for the first time, but I want everyone to kind of understand what we can and can't do. All right. I also want to show you a timeline that Kristen Trong and I went over just today about this review process. It is very intensive, and we are going to make this much more efficient than it is today. But bottom line is that there's at least 17 steps involved with getting money for these organizations, right? 17 steps takes longer than a week, longer than 2 weeks, sometimes longer than a month, and it really is intensive. But we start off by just receiving the request, then we have to sit down and meet, and we have to make it known to the JEC. The JEC has to communicate back and forth with us about their meetings. We have to communicate. It's our job to constantly update these organizations about how their request is going, right? Once we hash out, which hopefully each request we can get done in one meeting, right? But assuming that we do get it done, a transfer request or an interim budget request, assuming we do get that done in one meeting, we then have to update the organization. Then we have to present it to the Senate, update the organization again, and then pending the decision of the Senate, it's our job to update the organization one final time. So we're really connected to both the JEC and obviously the organizations that we work with. They really depend on us for communication and guidance. Okay. And I will go ahead. I'll email this out to everyone. This is kind of like a cheat sheet. It's definitely not a final cheat sheet because there is so much redundancy in the communication right now that it's true. Kristen is disturbed, but we're going to go ahead and fix that throughout the year. The last one I want to show you guys is that this is part of Title VIII. Title VIII is one of the titles in our Constitution, and it goes over a lot of really important stuff, but specifically Title VIII, Chapter 4, 804. This has a lot of. This is like a set of rules that's one step above our SOPs. I would encourage everyone to go ahead and look at this too. Our SOPs cover a lot of this stuff, but what I'll do is I will go ahead and email out Title VIII, the entirety of it, and I encourage you guys to read Chapter 4 by next meeting also. Okay. So, any other questions so far? Yeah.
For the document you had before this, what's it called? Like all the middle stuff, is that just for organizations that are new requesting interim budget, or even if like they're coming back from not having, like how does that work?
Well, for interim requests, it's either an organization that's new or an organization that has been previously funded last year and they miss a deadline, or if like they're reformed, like organizations like that, or they're reactivated, or they're frozen or they're unfrozen now. So
I'm asking if like all the middle steps, like are those all skipped for like let's say someone missed the deadline, do we skip like they have to go to CSI and talk to like all the JEC stuff?
It's kind of a case
stuff always happens for when you receive an interim request, regardless of like the origin of the organization, whether they're new or like existing.
Okay, yeah.
Because like not every organization changes the constitution every year. Sometimes like some people don't like transition well.
Okay.
Question. How do you define an organization being new, whether they ask for funds from us or whether they're just created like 14 weeks ago?
If they're new, it'll be through CSI will tell Kristen if they're new or not.
What if they're not new exactly, like they're a year old, if they never asked
Well, then we consider it a new organization for requesting funding.
Yeah, then you get the exact technicalities are the SOPs, okay? So you guys will be able to work with that, but that's a good question. Yeah, please, Gary.
Just want to clarify, the university requires every student organization to submit a constitution every year, and it could or could not change, so it just makes sense for JEC to check every organization year in and year out, and that would impact the work you do as well.
Correct. Good job. Any other questions about that? Please.
There isn't a question, but I know that Zane had like a flow chart that she created about the steps. I don't know if you ever received that or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, just because it like seems like simpler and like easier to read for like.
No, the flow chart's good. I like the flow chart. It's missing some information though, which is why I don't want to show it to you guys. It is more unfortunately, the process is more complicated than and she really simplified it, which is really good. And I'm gonna see if I can do the same thing, but there's a lot of stuff. So flow chart didn't really get quite get across in my opinion. But any other questions about this? I will go ahead. It doesn't have any misinformation, so I'll send that out too. The flow chart, that's a good idea. But yeah.
I was just saying it so like for new members of the committee who like this might like confuse them, with all the steps. Also to look at the flow chart that also has obviously things missing, but it's the things that you present to the organizations as well so that they understand. So well, good for us to understand as well.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, with that, we'll go over the vice chair, expectation of vice chair in a bit. So, would you like to keep one to Charlie?
Sure. Do you have the PowerPoint? So one of the viewpoint neutrality PowerPoints made by Gary, I believe, with like conjunction people in the past. So this committee mainly will be, with all committees, viewpoint neutral is pretty much the way we operate. Since we deal with a lot of funding, student organizations, and requests, it's important to be viewpoint neutral in this committee. And so you guys are having this presentation first. You have one in Senate tomorrow too. So where does viewpoint neutrality come from? So in the Southwark versus Board of Regents, decision was made that it is constitutional for campuses to collect the fee, because pretty much we operate under the activity and service fee.
Sorry.
And that's where we have the money to allocate to student organizations. And mandatory student fees can fund student organizations that address any issue or activity. And student orgs cannot be denied funding based on their viewpoint. So it makes a difference if the activities supported by the fee are conducted on our campus. So in addition to that, we have can an educational institution not fund a religious-based student publication and fund a secular student publication? The ruling is no. It's a direct violation of personal rights. Saying the court noted that no matter how scarce university publication funding may be, if it chooses to promote speech at all, it must promote all forms of speech. So we're pretty much saying that if we fund one, we have to fund all for publications. Hence, I think at this point we're not funding any. So again, when distributing mandatory student activity fees, student governments must use a viewpoint neutral process and avoid unbridled discretion of the funding body. Pretty much like if one of you decides like if you like this org or not, we'll give them more money. If you don't like them, we'll cut them. So no unbridled discretion. So limiting discretion of student governments. The court has identified these factors that specifying funding standards, which you guys have in your packets, policies prohibiting viewpoint neutral discrimination, which you guys have in Title 8, in your SOPs, and all of that stuff. And procedures to remove members for such discrimination, specific procedural requirements for funding hearings, and an appeals process, which is mainly for ASAR. what viewpoint neutrality is not. Funding cannot be denied. Based on the views of the organization, based on similarity. So let's say we have the Carlos Romero Club, and then we have the Carlos Appreciation Club. So like they sound similar, but we can't discriminate based on they both have Carlos in their name. So you can't also deny organizations based on their size. Let's say you have an org which has like 200 people, and the org has 10. We should be doing it based on the 10 of the reach, because some small organizations can obviously like CAB is a small little not an organization, but like they throw big events. So size really doesn't dictate the reach of an organization. What viewpoint neutrality is not. Does not mean that all student organizations need to receive the same amount of money, which is why we have the committee and now like an algorithm that does it for us. Mosh should probably make one. But does not mean that just because you fund one side of an issue, particular point of view, that you must fund the other side. It's individually and objective for each criteria. So, Gary?
Yeah, an example would be, just because you fund the college Democrats doesn't mean you have to fund the college Republicans. You're really basing on what the programs they have to offer and the good they bring to the university, for lack of a better explanation.
Fine.
So you have to, if you fund pro-choice, doesn't mean you have to fund pro-life, but they both produce or show you good quality programs that meet all criteria. You need to fund both of them equally based on what they are presenting. And things like the size of the group, all that kind of stuff matters. Size of the group attending the event. So, go ahead.
So now moving on to what viewpoint neutrality is. It's a stance all student government members must maintain when making funding decisions, which is important in this committee and also in Senate, but maybe we have to vote on it. So this method of allocating funds protects students' free speech rights and also adds equal chance of receiving funding. That's why each decision is viewpoint neutral based on fan outreach and based on your standards. It's not just picking and choosing. But you could further clarify with the organization if you need more questions. Scary said no denial because it's based on a particular opinion, whether popular or unpopular. Continuing, the most important thing to remember is that viewpoint neutral funding pertains to the process, not the outcome. So we're pretty much doing the process part in the committee. And further down is that organization's point of view on broad discretion of the funding body. I guess we could read that one. So moving on to the process, the funding decisions for the student organization should be based on how many students will be affected. Like for example, an organization is having a week of welcome event, they expect 100 people. Early event, they expect 30 people. That's what you would base your part of your allocation from. And the fiscal soundness and budget's fiscal soundness and responsibility. Sometimes we get some strange requests, and you guys will still filter through and figure it out. And audits, which your chair is going to be working on with you guys, and the relevance of the events to the group's mission. So let's say like we have the aquarium club, they want to go like skydiving. It's not really relevant to their mission. So then also 804, just part of your homework. So so examples of proper use. Student government group was going to fund informally rally on the American political system. The allocation committee should evaluate their findings for financial proposal not based on the group's political leanings, but on the fiscal strength of the proposal. Again, repeating that we can't deny funding based on similarity of events, but only the fiscal criteria without consideration of the intent of the group. So why is it important to send it to government? It's to be accurate, and we deal with a lot of different organizations, different opinions. It's for us to be consistent throughout all of our decision-making process. Example 1. The Committee on Appropriations allocates $200 for a social event for one club and $200 for a political rally event for another club. Both are expected to reach the same number. Was this decision viewpoint neutral? What do you guys think? Yay, nay?
It's not enough information.
Okay, that's one opinion, choice. Anyone else? Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there's enough information there.
The answer is yes. So, regardless of the intent of the club, if they reach similar amounts of people and have similar contributions to the school in terms of students reached, they deserve similar allocations. Going back, you're looking at $200 for an event, $200, they're reaching a similar amount of people.
May I expand on that? If,
Yeah.
like, for instance, one group is reaching 50 people, one group is reaching 500 people, then there should not be the same amount of money funded because the outreach is different. Yeah, so if you look at that as similar, and you couldn't discriminate social versus political, because those are the leanings of each group.
Kevin?
There's like no prior information to look at though, like, say this is like the first time they're doing an event and they say they expect to reach 200 people, are we trusting that they expect to reach 200 people?
Most of the organizations are going to be, these events have not happened before, so it's going to be on the judgment of the committee. That's what you guys are here to discuss it and talk about it.
But would we look into the prior history of the club?
Because they don't never existed before, like clubs change every year, so it's not like a solid like, yeah, every year they do great or every year they do bad. People change, offers change.
Yeah, like we've had this discussion in the past in this committee, and it's, let's say you do have an organization who last year said they had an event, they said they had a certain amount of people, but instead they had a lesser amount of people, right? Well, you can take that into account. You can take that into account to a certain extent because, like as he just said, the whole exec board is a complete different exec board, you know, and you can't really 100% judge the members in the organization today as you would for what people did in the past because they change from year to year. And although you do want to take that into account somewhat and say, well, if they're saying they're gonna have 1,000 people there, and it's really like an ice cream social, like, is that really plausible? Is that really something that the committee thinks is gonna actually happen? Or maybe could they have 200 if it's a week of welcome event? Or maybe if it's just an event for the members in their club, then maybe even less than that. It depends. And when you meet with the organizations, they'll give you a better idea when you ask them, okay, well, how many people do you think will show up to this? And so.
Mika?
I know it's one of our duties to make it much easier for these organizations to have reach to these funds. So I have one question: what parameters do we use when we decide whether the funding is allocated properly or not? Like the money we're giving to them. Like why would we fund a specific club more for their social in comparison to someone else if there's a new exec for every year?
Well, I mean, if there's some organizations that have been around for a while or for whatever reason they didn't submit an annual budget, and you know that last year their event brought in 300 people, then it makes sense to fund for something more than that. Especially older organizations typically typically grow. Like that's part of them being around. They might bring in more people this year. It also depends on, you know, if you have a meeting with the president or if I have a meeting with the president or the financial officer, we feel like maybe this year they're not as good with their finances, they're maybe being too idealistic about what they want to bring in, we can probably justify funding less for them. It's all a matter of our judgment. That's why we have this committee.
Yeah, and the other thing too is a lot of it's based on standards. So a student organization that did make it for funding during like, the HRC process, they're going to be given money the same way in your organization will, like $2 per head for an event with food. So the only reason they were changed is because they have more people, not because they are more reliable and they're having successful events. Doesn't mean like, oh, let's bump it up to 4 now because of that. It's still by protocol. So.
Carlos?
Even like a more in-depth explanation that is obviously which is part of our homework, which is good. In Proviso, there's certain things. So we can't fund more than $7 per head for food, right? That's the maximum we can fund. But if we funded $7 per head, maybe we wouldn't have enough money to fund anything else. So that's when the standards that Gustavo was talking about come into play, which are things that we decide upon as a committee. So we'll say, okay, well, well, we can fund $7, but we'll set our standard to $2 or whatever it may be, and that'll be for a lot of different things. And you'll see that come up in proviso, and then when we go over the standards, Chris, I'm sure we'll go over that.
Alright, moving on to the next one. So there's two political organizations, student organizations asking for funding. Both have similar events. One has 500 members, other has 200. And they both receive the exact same number of funds. The organization with 200 students is planning a larger event than the organization with 500 students. So, why or why not? Why do you think it's not people neutral?
Because there are more members, so the odds that outreach would be higher is greater.
Well, you don't factor in the amount of members in the student organization. You base your decision on the amount of reach the organization is going to have, like intended attendance. Carlos?
So I think that it wasn't viewpoint neutral because of the fact that the 200 member organization is going to reach more people.
Yep. So correct answer is no. So the trial is based on objectivity. When both clubs get the same funding, when they have different events and different reaches, it's not. So because the group with a larger membership should have not been funded the same, but actually less for the projected smaller event. So we're not taking like the org, we could have 10 members or 1,000 members. It's not taken into our decision making process.
And I think what plays into that is you can, like, if you've ever joined an on-campus organization, they have to let anyone join the organization. So if I want, I can join the triathlon club or tribal, I think is what they're called, and I could not go to a single meeting, not attend a single event, but I still show up as part of the membership. So that's why maybe a larger organization might throw a smaller event than a smaller organization, just depending on the organization.
Leslie?
I just have a question, what do clubs or organizations do with excess funds, like if their event is smaller than projected?
Well, they get flexible spending, so it's up to the organization. Sometimes let's say they get $100 and they buy $50 of food. They can use it for their other events if they intend to get like more attendance or stuff like they want to like do a social, put more to their social and things like that. So it's flexible to the organization. But at the end of the year, they don't spend it. It gets like swept back. So like a giant pot. So next one, we have the Atheist Student Association was allocated $400 for a social event to reach 350 people, while a Christian organization was allocated $150 for a reach of 450 people. So allocation of 150 was given with a note that there were similar organizations holding concert the same week. The Christian organization has 130 members, while the atheist organization has 85. Both organizations requested $1,000. Why?
Because it would, I don't think we're taking into account, no, I'm not sure.
The Christian organization has more reach, but is funded less money.
Are we allowed to are we allowed to take into consideration whether a similar organization is throwing an event, which is pretty much the same?
Well, the keywords are allocation was given with a note that there's similar organizations holding the same event. We treat each event like independently. So like we could both hold a concert just because I'm holding a concert. Doesn't mean you can't have a concert.
So it's not viewpoint neutral because the outreach was higher and you cannot discriminate in terms of whether it's the same event.
Yep. So, Gary?
Maybe a good way to look at that is concerts per se. Let's say if one group is gonna bring in John Mayer, another group is gonna bring in Jason Mraz, that's okay. But if both groups are gonna bring in John Mayer, we try to get them to coordinate and bring in, because one group, let's say John Mayer came in August, and then another group wanted to bring John Mayer in September, you could say no because the concert already happened on campus.
Carlos?
Yeah, also, at the end of the day, you have to look at if the concert's even relative to the student organizations, I mean, to what they're doing. So if they want to bring in John Mayer, but really they're the knitting club, you're going to want to question them both and be like, all right, well, is John Mayer going to like teach knitting at some point? So.
Just worth spending money on.
So, questions, concerns? Honestly, global, so I guess no questions. So I guess, Gary,
I want y'all to know that I'll be doing this again tomorrow night at Senate, maybe taking it a little bit deeper. You did a very nice job of it. And maybe some examples from my past at another school, give some examples of some really weird groups that are out there that get funding because just not break viewpoint neutrality. One of the things on this committee you'll be asked to do is sign a contract and identify the group you belong to. I'll share that tomorrow, but it'll look something like this. When they start to do it, in this committee, special funding and travel and all that, we'll have to sign something like this. Because if a group that you belong to comes before this committee, you should not be in the decision making of that group because you cannot be objective. Okay. So this is not part of it. But just realize that it is what it is. It's here to protect you and the university from being sued by many groups that will sue you if you not use it, if you do break First Amendment rights.
Good. Okay. Last but not least. Two more things. The first off, just kind of vice chair expectations really fast. So I went over this a little bit, but basically the vice chair has one really, really big job. Not just working closely with me, but my schedule this summer is pretty shaky, and I can go into more detail about that later. But there's going to be several committee meetings where I'm not going to be able to attend, and the vice chair would have to chair those meetings. So not just knowing all this stuff, but also being on the chair meetings, something the vice chair's going to have to do. And if it happens to be where I miss the Senate meeting as well, they would be giving the committee report as well. So the vice chair that's why the vice chair has been working really closely with me. And that is another reason, quite frankly, why I want the committee to get really involved too, is because Zane had a really hard time last summer, and she was here all summer, and I'm not going to be here all summer. I live in Jacksonville, so like I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning to drive here. So I really want to, be really frank with you guys. It is going to be challenging for me this summer to do everything that's expected of me for this position, but I was pretty passionate about it when I started, and the more I learn about it, the more I really care about it. And I know that, the 10 people, the 13 people who signed up for this committee, you guys are already out here and already willing to hear us give a presentation on viewpoint neutrality and 2 presentations on operating procedures for the Appropriations and Audits Committee. I'm sure you guys are going to really care about this too. So just want to get that out there. And do start thinking about how we're going to do vice chair. The vice chair is going to get voted on next committee meeting, which is going to be next Tuesday. So with that in mind, the other thing also, as far as that was a really good point about standard operating procedures, and I do want to go through it more in depth with you guys. Depending on how much business we have next week, what I'd really like to do is have, I'm going to go ahead and forward the SOPs to everyone and Title 8 Chapter 4 to everyone. I'm going to go ahead, if you guys go ahead and read it, then during the committee we can all go around and basically summarize the sort of middle section, so we can all go through it line by line and make sure all have a really good understanding of it. Okay. So with that, any announcements, please?
I just had a question.
Yeah.
You said you wanted each to summarize a part of the SOPs or part of 804? Or both?
Well, both. They really need to go over both. 804 is really short. So
Are you gonna assign them so you know?
we're always going to read it. We're going to go over it.
Okay, cool.
It's going to be fun. Everyone needs to read everything. So, any other questions, please?
We're still gonna have us sign something with our emails, right?
Yeah, I'll pass that around when we leave.
And our meeting's gonna be 2 o'clock on Mondays, Tuesday, every Monday?
Yeah. Now, every Monday, technically we are set to convene every Monday. Depending on the business, we might not meet every Monday. I'm still kind of deciding if we're going to meet actually next Monday. We do need to elect vice chairs. I wish I just completely forgot about saying it. I set the agenda last Monday. I just forgot to send it out yesterday, so I apologize for that. But we really do need to elect vice chairs. But honestly, the business that we have, it's not too pressing right now. But that being said, we are probably going to meet next week. I wouldn't expect every single week, but probably close to every other week we're going to be meeting. So, are there any other questions? All right, any announcements whatsoever? Please.
I just want to obviously thank Chris for coming out here. You had to drive some for him. I didn't know that. That's pretty awesome. Also, congratulate you on doing such a great job as a chair. The first time I chaired, pretty god awful. So,
Thank you.
so you did a lot better than I did. Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone in the committee to get really involved and definitely read over everything that Chris sent out before the meeting. It helps for all of us to be able to quickly go through it in under an hour. And yeah, to just get involved and encourage all of you guys that we're going to kill it this semester. Auditing and appropriating, hopefully. So, cool.
For the next committee, where you guys have business. So when you guys say your name before you speak for the secretary that we're gonna hire. It's gonna be 2 of them. So that'll help so they get familiarized with their voice, so make typing the minutes easier. And one thing we're trying out is live streaming on the committees, so the cameras are there. So when we're done, it's gonna be all on YouTube. So we'll see how that affects like the committees. So it's pretty much a trial period. And if you're gonna not make it to Senate or like committee, not gonna make it to committee, email Chris. So what's the reason? Not gonna make it to Senate, email me. And should be about it for now.
Please, sir.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, as advisor, I'm watching that I was other advisors too. Glad you're here. You know, the Senate is one of the few positions. It's been done. It's not a few positions, so you have the goodness of your heart because you want to do something good for the university. So I applaud you all for that. You realize it's growing as a learning experience. You're going to make mistakes. And a good example, I make them at my age. I will continue to make them. Chris had his agenda ready, just press send it out. But we have guidelines for a reason. And there's certain, in a political context, you're held to a higher standard in the business or that kind of stuff. And things can happen if you don't follow that standard. So we just try to dot our I's and cross our T's. But very good job today. I've seen some really bad beginning chairs go. So really good job. And I expect y'all to realize that a committee, it's not just the chair. The committee is all of you. You have one vote on the committee. You can make, motions to the chair. Don't be afraid. Chris is going to set the vision and the direction for you, but you are an equal partner in this committee. Don't be afraid to show your voice and really get involved in the committee work. And support your chair.
And last but not least, thank you very much, Anna, for subbing today. It'll be formal in the next meeting, but thank you very much. Did you run for senator?
No.
No, so you're just doing this. You're just doing this for your best friend.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We can't wait to see you guys this summer. Okay?
Sorry.
So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Leslie,
I move to adjourn the
is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.
It has a lag.
It's okay.
It's a really good